So today we're kicking off this brand new series called At the Table. And we want to talk about this over the next couple of weeks, about the significance of this. And the Bible talks a lot about the table. In fact, if you guys have your Bibles, I want to invite you to turn to Luke chapter 14. And Luke 14 and 15 is where we're going to get to in just a few moments. But tables are significant. In our family growing up, we would sit and we would gather around the table. And my mom was just amazing. She always had these beautiful tables that were set. And growing up, we kind of had this unique thing. We had like the dining room table, and then we had the kitchen table. Does anyone else know what I'm talking about? Like the dining room table was always set like this. It was just meticulous. It was beautiful. We didn't eat at the dining room table, right? Like we ate Thanksgiving there. We ate when like family was in town. We ate at the kitchen table though, right? But my mom was so good. Even the kitchen table was set up and it looked awesome, right? And we would gather at the table. We would eat meals at the table. It was a little bit of a different time back then. But it was always so important that we would gather around the table. And I remember lessons that my parents taught me at the table. I was thinking about this week. I remember this lesson so distinctively the night before I started high school. And my parents were talking to me, and I was like a wannabe skater, right? Like I was a wannabe because I wasn't good. I've never been graceful. I was always falling. I was always getting injured. I was always in the ER. My parents said, we're about to lose our insurance. You need to stop skateboarding. My basketball coach said, you're going to be off the team because you're always getting hurt skateboarding. And I just had this dream to be on ESPN X Games. And so I just tried to skate, and but I dressed like a skater. I mean, I had like this chain wallet thing going on. I had shoes that always had holes in them. I mean, I just, my T-shirts were always from Goodwill. I refused to buy new clothes. It was like I had an image, like, Mom, like, this is who I am. And my parents said, tomorrow's the first day of a new chapter of your life. First day of high school. You want to make a great first impression. And they taught me this lesson. They said, you never have a second chance to make a first impression. And I'm teaching my kids that now, right? And we fought over it. I'm like, I'm not going to wear a nice shirt. The first day of school, I'm not going to wear I'm going to be the laughingstock of high school if I show up in like a button-up shirt, right? Like I have this vision of getting shoved into lockers and swirlies if I show up like a guy dressed up, and guess what? I wore that button-up shirt. And they gave me the option. They're like, hey, you're going into high school now. You can make the choice. And I wore that, and that lesson of learning and making the first impression was huge for my life. And that was at the table. And for us, we're always at the table. We're always gathering as a family around the table. And we have a goal to eat around the table 3 to 4 nights a week. Most weeks we get there. We don't get there all the time. But that's our goal because we realize that community happens, family happens. We have conversations. One of the questions I ask my kids almost every day is, what is one thing you learned? What's one risk you took today? I want to raise some entrepreneurs, right? I wanted to take some risks in life. And so we're always gathering around the table. And this is the place that life happens. And here's what I believe. I believe that the table is really a perfect picture of the church. You see, Jesus said this in Psalms 23. The word says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. The New Living Translation says it like this, that you prepare a feast. Do you know what Jesus is doing in the hours before he goes to the cross? He's eating at a table. He's reclining at a table with the disciples. They've gathered to have a meal. And it's important. We've always had a table in our home. I remember when we first got married, and we had this hand-me-down table from my parents, and it was metal, and it was black, and it was cool. But when we got married, Kendra goes, "No, let's get our own table." And babe, do you remember this? We went to Fred Meyer, and Fred Meyer is like H-E-B, but with like a clothing section. It's this place up in Oregon, and they're everywhere, and they're just massive. And we go to Fred Meyer, and we pick out this table, and we had just gone through Dave Ramsey. In fact, Michael and I were talking about Dave Ramsey this morning. We're going to be kicking that off in a couple weeks here. It's one of the best things you could possibly do for your finances. So we were committed. We had no money, and we were committed to live debt-free. And so we bought this table, and it was great. We bought it on clearance, and then a few years later, you're like, I don't really like the table. It doesn't match. And so I literally sanded down the table. It was this dark wood. I sanded it down, and then we stained it this really light color, and it just brightened it. And then our kids love just to color on it. Like that table, like the last couple of years, was covered in paint and crayons, all kinds of things, right? And then when we moved here to start the church, we invested. We went to Crate and Barrel, right? And we went to Crate and Barrel, and we bought, it was the only new piece of furniture that we bought. We bought a new table. We didn't buy anything else. We took what we had. We worked the Goodwill market, or the Facebook marketplace like crazy. But we got this other table. And babe, you remember that table? It was so nice. And then we remodeled our kitchen last year, and my wife goes, hey, I found this table online. It's like a $2,000 table this lady's selling for $300. I'm like, great. We're in the middle of an ice storm. She's like, I know, I already talked to our neighbors. We're going to borrow their truck. Jaron said it's okay, and we can go get this table. I'm like, it's an ice storm. I'm not going down 35. Guess who won that argument? Not me, yeah. And so we go, and we flip the table that we bought, and then we get this other table, and we get there, we get to this lady's apartment, and it's this beautiful table, but what she didn't disclose is there was this huge stain on the table from, nail polish remover. So guess what I'm doing again? I'm sanding that table down too, and now we got this beautiful table, and it matches, and it's great, and you can fit a ton of people around it. But life happens around the table. Jesus brought life around the table. He's always having a meal. And you see that in every country. You see that in every part of the world. It's one of the commonalities is people come together, they gather, they eat, and they experience this. And this is what I believe. The table is more than just a place that we eat. It's a place where life happens. We were watching our good friend's dog the other day, and they came over, and after they pick up their dog, we're just hanging out. We're sitting around in the kitchen, around the table, right? It's where life happens. It's where conversations happen. It's where development and instruction, all kinds of things happen around the table. Here's what we know. Around the table, it's where people get fed, right? And this is true of us as a church. When you come to the church, this picture, it's you come to be fed, right? You come to receive. You come, we open up the Word of God, and this is where you get fed. It can't be the only place that you eat, though, right? Right? Like this cannot be, you're going to be the most malnourished Christians if you only eat once a week, right? I mean, we don't do it with food. We can't do it in our lives as well. John 6 tells us this. Jesus replied, I'm the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry again. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. Jesus says, I'm the bread, and it's better than any bread you could buy at H-E-B or Easy Tiger Bakery. I mean, it's the best bread. Jesus says, I'm the bread of life. I do my devotions each morning, and the way that it works is a couple days a week I'll drop my kids off at school, and then I'll usually go to a coffee shop because the Bible with coffee is like that much more holy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like some of you just told me recently you're fasting caffeine, and I'm like, that's not spiritual. Like that's not good coffee. It's just like it brings the Word of God to life. It brings me to life, right? And the other day I'm just sitting at this coffee shop, Summer Moon. Have you guys been there? Any of you guys like moon? What is it? Moon milk? Like you guys, you love that. They call it Christian crack. That's what they told me. They go, it's like they call it Christian crack. This moon milk. I'm like, I want a iced coffee, an iced Americano with nothing in it, like just black, right? But I'm sitting there, I'm reading my Bible, and this guy walks up and he's like, brother, you're reading the bread of life. And I'm like, I got my headphones in, I'm just kind of, and I'm like, wait, what? He starts just using all these phrases, the good book, and I'm like, oh yeah, the Bible, yeah, that's what I'm reading. And we start talking about it and how it just impacts you. But it doesn't matter. I was reading Leviticus this week, and it was speaking to me. And the Leviticus is the law. It's all these 613 micro laws they had to live by. And I'm reading it, and I'm thinking, Lord, there's life in this because it's the bread of life, right? God speaks through the bread of life. It's more than just where we get fed. It's where we gather, right? We come together and we gather as a church. We gather as a church. We gather as a body. There's this thing I love. Wednesday nights, we have a great men's group that meets right here. And the joke now is like, you can't stay here. Like, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Because our guys, we'll go an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, and our guys are just hanging out still. I get here at 6:15, they're already in the parking lot, waiting, in conversation, in relationships, right? Like, you love it here. We gather, we come together, we build these relationships. A guy told me recently, he said, I haven't had this since I was in college. I haven't had this kind of relationship, this kind of connection since I was in college, and now I'm in my mid-40s. And he goes, I can't wait for Wednesdays. I can't wait to come together and experience what God does. It's where we gather. It's so important. It's where connections grow, right? It's where connections grow stronger. There's this thing when we break bread, when we come together in relationship, that we begin these deeper connections. One of the guys rolled up this morning, and he was driving a new truck, and I just got, as I watched him get out of the truck, I got so excited for him. I was like, I'm so happy he's driving this new truck. I mean, he loves to fish, and for the longest time, he's been pulling his boat with his car. And I'm like, man, I just got excited for him, right? Because there's a connection there. There's a relationship there. There's a love. Like the thing that excites him, it excites me because I care about him and I love him and I'm excited for him. And that's true. That's true for any of us. It's these connections that grow. When we find out that someone we've been praying for has an answer to a prayer, we get excited by that, right? We've been praying for them. We've been praying for God to move in those things, and they get excited and we get excited. Those connections grow stronger. They develop deeper. And here's the thing. The other thing is, the thing I love about the church is that everyone contributes. Everyone contributes. This morning we had people got here at 8:30 and they're getting everything set up. Our worship team was here not only this morning, they were here Tuesday night. Everyone is contributing. And our tech guys are like, hey, do you know how to solve this? And I'm like, you're looking at the wrong guy. Like, you're the expert. You got that, right? I'm going to preach, but you got that. You know what you're doing with that. It's a place that everyone contributes. Everyone plays a part. It's like this. Have you ever gone to a potluck? I know it's kind of like an antiquated term, but a potluck it's a gathering where everyone comes together and they all bring a dish, right? In some cultures, it's really, really, really big. When we first started our church, we had a Bible study in our living room, and we would tell people, everyone bring a dish. We're all going to eat together. We're going to break bread together, and so bring a dish. And everyone would come, and what always happened is the food was like amazing, right? Like the food was incredible. And I remember one young man, he goes, hey, I don't know how to cook. I don't know if I can bring anything. I said, you just bring chips and salsa, right? That's just always a hit. We're in Texas. Everyone loves chips and salsa. Bring chips and salsa. But we all bring something, right? And you guys know at a good potluck, what happens? You get fed, right? You get fed and you find things that you didn't even know you liked, right? Like I love potlucks in Texas because there's always a good amount of barbecue. I mean, like ribs and brisket and some chicken, some turkey. I don't even like turkey, but barbecue turkey, oh my gosh, it's another level, right? And you know what happens is you get this plate, and here's what we do, right? We usually let the wives and children go first because we're gentlemen, right? We also know we're going to eat everything, so it's like, oh, you go ahead, you just go. We're just going to clean it out, right? And then what happens? Like, you're always monitoring your kids to make sure they don't take too much sweets, but also too much of the good stuff, right? You're like, hey, like, you don't want mad cow disease from all that pulled pork. Like, just save some for the rest of us, right? Like, we're monitoring it, we're watching it. And then what happens? You leave, and what do they say? They say, make a plate. Take a plate with you, right? And so you get leftovers. You leave with your dish cleaned and you have leftovers. And it's like, this is a miracle, right? This is amazing. Like, this is Jesus multiplying food here. Like the loaves and fish is what happens when we have a potluck, right? And that's how it is with church. We come together and everyone contributes. Everyone plays a part. Everyone has a different, distinct role, and we all play a different part. And so here's what I believe. I believe that there's really 4 seats at the table. And over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about each of these 4 seats. We have the person that is, they're new to Jesus. Maybe they're new to church. They're in this role of what maybe we would call, and maybe it's even insider language a little bit, but like the seeker, right? The person that is, they're wanting God. They're kind of checking this whole thing out. Maybe that's you today, and you're like, man, I'm here for the first time, or I'm watching online for the first time, or I've been coming for a few weeks, and I'm just like checking this out, making sure this guy's okay, right? You know, making sure that the music is good, making sure that my kids have a great experience, right? All those things. But the seeker is really that person that's like, they're thinking, they're leaning, right, toward being a part of this. Then we have the next person. It's the growing Christian, right? I love being around. I love being around all different spots of the table, but I love being around growing Christians because they're like, hey, pastor, can we get together? We'll go to Summer Moon. Like, we'll drink coffee. Like, can we just, I have a million questions. And they're so hungry, right? They just want to learn. They want to grow. They're like, what are you listening to? What are you watching? Who are you reading? Who are you podcasting? Like, they just want to grow. And I love being around those kinds of Christians because it's like we can just talk about stuff. And then there's this other seat, and this is the mature Christian, right? This is the Christian that's been walking with Jesus for a while. And when we hear the word mature, we think gray hair, we think some wrinkles. That's not always the case, though, right? It can be someone young in life, but there's a maturity, there's a weight to them. You hear it when they talk. You see it in the way that they live, the things that they do, the things that they don't do. There's a maturity to their life. It's not a religious spirit. It's just there's a weight to them. You hear it when they pray. You see it in the way that they give and they serve and they love. In our church, we're very fortunate to have some people that sit in this seat. Man, they're incredible. They speak into our lives. They're leading, they're guiding, they're investing. And we need this. See, if we are just a church of just this, you know what it is? Or just this? It's like a youth group, right? Like we need some seasoned people in this church, right? Like I look around this room and I love about Mission Church. I love that we are a multi-ethnic, multi-generational church. When we set out to plant this church, we prayed this prayer, and we still pray this prayer. God, help us to reach all people. We don't want to be just a church for the young. We don't want to be a church just for the older. We want to be a church for all people. God, we want to be a church that's reaching all people, all types of people. And I look around this room, and that gets me excited. I meet people all the time that are new to our church, and it gets me excited about what God is doing, how he's moving. Because we want to reach all people. And our mission statement is reaching people and building lives. If we're going to be a church that reaches people and builds lives, then our church should look like our city. And so we need people in every one of these seats. But then there's a fourth seat. And this fourth seat is kind of what I want to talk about today. This is the person that's not even here yet, right? It's hard to envision this person because they're not even here. They're not even a part of this place yet. And we want to make room for all kinds of people. We want to make room for all these different things. So we're always doing what we can to reach more people. This week, we had our VBSs, right? We had 3 VBSs in 3 different homes in 3 different cities, right? Hutto, Round Rock, and Leander. And what I loved is that we said, we're going to take the church to people. So often the church says, hey, come to church. And we always want to be inviting people. But we also want to do all that we can to take the church to people. It's the reason this year we didn't do our Easter egg hunt here. We did it at the elementary school that we adopted, Robertson Elementary. And many of you every single week were showing up and reading to these students. Here's what I love about this school. I was talking to the principal on the last day. She said, our school grew more from where they started to where they finished than any other elementary school in the city of Round Rock. Now, that is because the teachers and the administration and the faculty, the staff, but we got to play a part in that, right? We got to play a small part in that. And that's how God's moving. We're always going to people. We always want to do all that we can to reach people, to go to people, to meet people where they're at. Jesus said it like this in Matthew chapter 22. And he said to his servants, the wedding feast is ready. Now go out to the street corners and invite everyone you can. So the servants brought in everyone they could find, good and bad alike, and the banquet hall was filled with guests. I'm so grateful for this place that God's given us. One of my friends was in town the other day, and he said, hey, can I see the church? And so we walked in, and he goes, people come to church here? I said, yeah. He goes, Ezra, this is like a couple shipping containers. Like when I think of a church building, like this is just a couple, and I'm like, thanks, it's like, it is what it is, right? But we always want to be making more room for more people, right? As we continue to grow. I mean, I was so encouraged today. Last Sunday's Memorial Day. Usually at Mission Church, it's empty. And it was filled. We're having to set up more chairs. We always want to be making more space, more room as we continue to grow. Luke 14, Jesus said it like this. He said, after the servant had done this, he reported, there is still room for more. So his master said, go into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come so that the house will be full. Right? We want to do everything we can to take the gospel to all people, right? To the ends of the earth, to our neighborhoods, to every place that we go, having VBSs in our neighborhoods. One of our neighbors came and she said, my kids love this. Like, I was surprised. And I'm like, well, do you think we're going to, like, not do something great? Like, it's going to be awesome, right? She goes, my kids love this. It was so good. We want to do all that we can to go to the ends of the earth, to the ends of our city. John 17, Jesus says, just as you sent me into the world, I am sending them into the world. So we have this mandate, right? Reaching people and building lives is more than just a phrase, more than just a slogan, more than just a mission statement. It's our mandate from Jesus himself to go, to be sent, who he sent us to be. And then in John 20:21, it says this, and he said, peace be with you, as the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. Jesus says, I'm sending you out. See, sometimes we think that in church we're supposed to just kind of spectate, right? Like following Jesus, and we get in this mindset that we're not supposed to talk about Jesus, we're not supposed to invite people to church, we're just supposed to kind of like just, that's for me, that's for you, you guys just, don't ask, don't tell. Like we take that into the church, and that could not be further from the truth. We're supposed to ask, we're supposed to tell, we're supposed to invite, we're supposed to go. We're supposed to do all that we can to share this message. The final thing Jesus says in Matthew 28, before he leaves, this is what he says. He says, then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you. And then Jesus says this, and surely I am with you always to the very end. So here's the key. The key is that we'd be people that would witness. The key is that we would be people that would say, okay, I once sat in this chair, and now I want to do everything I can to help people find this chair. I once sat here, and now I want to be people that go out and invite people to encounter and experience and find the love and the peace and the joy of God that I found. Last night, we were driving home from a grad party, and we were just amazed at the sky. And it was this picture. We're coming from Georgetown where it was just dark, and then I look out the window, and there's just like this intense light coming through. Did you see that? It was like, how does this exist all in the same sky at the same moment? I mean, it was just this, and it was this picture of, and I just sat there, and as I'm driving, I'm thinking, Lord, that's my life. You took me from a place of darkness to a place of light. You took me from a place of hopelessness to a place of great hope, and this is what you've done. This is what you've done for us. And so our role as a church is to do all that we can. So here's what it looks like. We want to be intentional as a church. I know someone recently once said to me, they said, so what do you do like all week long? Like do you just show up and like just kind of just talk? Like how does that work? And I'm like, well, Monday morning I sit down and I sit in my chair for about 6 to 8 hours and I study and I begin to write. And then Tuesday I do the same thing again. And then I need a whole week just to let this marinate and process. And I pray over the message. And I said, and that's just one of the parts to what I get to do. But there's intentionality. There's great intentionality. I'm always thinking about, okay, Lord, who is this message for? Who is this for? And I think about the mature person. I think about the person in this seat and in that seat and that seat. And I think about the person that's coming for the first time. And we've changed the way, that was almost dangerous. We changed the way that we've done church over the years. We changed the way that the style because we want to reach people. We won't compromise on teaching the Word of God. We won't compromise on our convictions. But the message, the way that we communicate the message, we want to continue to do all that we can to make it in a way that's understandable, that people can catch it and learn it and go from it. So there's an intentionality in almost everything that we do. You'd be surprised if you sat in some of our meetings, you're like, you guys are spending a lot of time talking about just this one area. But the reason being is because people's lives matter. Your life matters. But not just your life, the people that are in this seat. That matters to us. It matters to us greatly. We want to do all that we can to fill the seat. And so what do we see? We see the first part to intentional is that there's an invitation. There's an invitation. This time of year is fun because you get like so many invitations, right? We got a number of invitations recently in the mail. This is one we got for a little girl's birthday party, and my son was invited to her party. We actually didn't make it. It was at a splash pad, but we got this invitation this last week. Recently, I got this invitation for Mason, one of our seniors that's graduating. It's for his graduation announcement, and we get invitations all the time, right? We get invitations to weddings, to businesses opening up, all kinds of cool things we're getting invites to. And most of it now is digital, right? Like, we live in kind of a digital world, and so a lot of those invites are digital. But we have invites that we always are giving out. And I can't encourage you enough to take some of these and to invite people. This intentional invitation, right? To say, okay, I'm going to keep some. I was talking with Pastor Johnny the other day, and he was in a store, and he said, man, I just had some invites, and I walked up to a family, started talking to them, I invited them to church. Like, I love that. We were talking to a woman last night at a grad party, and sometimes she'll just pull over the side of the road. She has this sign in her car, and her sign says, free prayer. She said, people will pull up, and they'll open up their soul, they'll open up their heart, they'll open up their life, and she goes, I get to pray with all kinds of people in all kinds of crazy situations. It's that intentional invitation. It's not to say, okay, I'm going to invite these 5 people, and then I'm good for the rest of the year. It's saying, okay, everywhere I go, I want to keep invites. I keep invites in my car. I keep invites in my gym bag. I'm always looking for someone at the gym that I connect with to invite them to church. Because I want what you have. I want what I have. I want them to experience the life that we've experienced. So we always want to be intentional with those invites. And you don't want to be weird about it, right? Like there's just, sometimes people are just weird about their invites. The other day, this lady shows up at our house, and she's selling solar panels. And my wife does this sometimes, and I want to talk to you about it afterwards. But she does this thing where she'll say, you got to wait for my husband to come home. Like, I'm the decision maker on everything. I'm like, just tell him we don't want solar panels, right? Like we don't want solar panels. That's just end of conversation. So she does this to me the other day, and I said, you know what? And the girl comes back. I said, you know what? Let me get my wife. So my wife goes out, and she goes, listen, she goes, we're really not interested. And the girl goes, that's okay. We can still be friends. No, it was so weird. I was like, what? You're not friends to be, like, okay. Like, my wife's like, okay, great, have a good day. You know, it was so awkward. Like, don't be that way, church. Like, don't be that way when you invite people to things, okay? Like just don't, right? Like, you want to be intentional. You want to be relational. You want to be human in those invitations. Be intentional with the invitation. Be intentional with the way that you go about that. Don't make it weird. My friends and I have this phrase we use all the time with each other. Like, don't make it weird, right? Just don't. Don't make it weird. Our witness is so important. Last year, I heard something that Google did a search. They did a study around Easter. And they said the word church was Googled 16 billion times. 16 billion times. People are looking. People are hungry. One of the things I try to do often when I go to a restaurant is I just tell our server, I say, hey, in a moment we're going to pray over our meal. Is there anything that I can pray for you for? I don't remember to do it every time. But it's amazing how people will open up about stuff. Hey, could you pray for my daughter? She left and we haven't talked. Hey, could you pray for my job? Like, this is not my forever job. I'm looking for this. I'm going back to school. People will open up for all kinds of things. Be intentional. Be caring. Be relational in those things. So verse 15 of Luke 14, come back here with me, and this is where I want to kind of land today. Jesus says this. He says, hearing this, a man sitting at the table with Jesus exclaimed, what a blessing it will be to attend a banquet in the kingdom of God. Now, this guy was absolutely right, but he was also kind of clueless at the same time because he didn't realize that the kingdom of God, as we've been teaching about for the first part of this year, was not only one day, but it's today. It's not only a not yet, but it's also a now, right? We get to experience, we get to live in the kingdom of God. And then Jesus says this. Jesus replied with a story. He said, a man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, 'Come, the banquet is ready.' But they all began making excuses. One said, 'I have just bought a field and I must inspect it.'" That guy's a fool. Like, you inspect the field before you buy it, right? You know, it's like you check that thing out. My mom's a realtor. She has clients that are in other parts of the country sometimes. And sometimes I'll be like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, I'm just FaceTiming around the house," right? They want to see it before they buy it, right? They inspect it. Then listen to this excuse. Another said, "I've just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I want to try them out." That's a rich man right there. He bought 10 oxen, right? "Please excuse me." Another said, "I just got married, so I can't come." That one always cracks me up. Every time I'm like, "Oh, you just got married. Oh, okay. There's no more social life for you. I have a wife. I can't come now." Funny excuses. But here's the thing. We can't let excuses stop us from inviting people, right? Sometimes I'll invite someone to church and they'll say, "I can't come this Sunday." I'm like, "That's okay, because we got church again the next Sunday," right? Like, we can't let those excuses stop us from inviting people, right? You're here, every single one of you are here. Every single one of you online are here because someone invited you. Someone invited you, and I watch this so often happen. It's like, I'll meet someone, I'm like, how did you come to Mission Church? I said, "Well, I got invited by so-and-so. And then so-and-so got invited by so-and-so." And it's like this chain reaction of transformation in people's lives. Then it says this, verse 21, "The servant returned and told his master what they said. His master was furious and said, 'Go quickly into the streets and alleys of the town and invite the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.'" Here's the principle in that. Don't just settle for inviting those people that are close to you. Don't just settle for inviting those people that are in your circle, right? The master says, "Listen, there's more people out there. There's a banquet. There is a party. There's a celebration. We need to invite more people," right? So go outside of what's normal. Go outside of what's comfortable and begin to find more people and invite those people too. In other words, he's saying, be led by the Spirit. Look for those people that the Spirit would lead you to talk to invite, to have a conversation like you did in a store with someone. Every day, there's an opportunity for us to be Jesus and to be a witness and to invite people. And it's not just like, hey, we just want to meet a quota. No, we care about lives. We care about people. Humanity is at stake. We want to do all that we can to reach people. It's amazing because we live in one of the most unchurched areas, and not just all of Texas, in all of the country. Austin is one of the most unchurched areas in the entire nation. If you don't believe me, next Sunday when you're coming to church, just look at how many 2 cars are in every driveway in your neighborhood. There's days where I come in late to church and I'm like, man, like there's 2 cars in every single one of these homes. Maybe they just have really late services, or maybe they go Saturday night or Sunday. I don't know. But it's a reality. It's a reminder that we have so many opportunities to reach people. And then verse 22, it says this: "After the servant had done this, he reported, 'There's still room for more.' So his master said, 'Go out into the country lanes and behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come, so that the house will be full.'" The second thing we see is not just the invitation, it's the presentation, right? It's this presentation. How many of you have had a meal and it's a good meal, but the presentation, right? Like, I love going into restaurants that have great environments. I mean, there's some restaurants I'll go into that don't have a good environment, but if it's a good environment and it's a good meal, man, I am hooked, right? I mean, good service too, but I'm hooked, right? Like that presentation, they care about it. They want to do their best. And for us as a church, it's the same way. We want to do everything that we can to make the presentation, to present the gospel in a way that's understandable, that's good, that's great. I don't just like, Saturday night, like, what could I talk about tomorrow? Let me see if I got an old message that I could just kind of pull out, and, they haven't heard it. They forgot it 7 years ago. I could just teach that. No, it's intentional, and planning these things out far in advance, sitting with our team. Easter, after our first service, I sat down with our team. I said, okay, what do we need to change? Start with me. Like, what do I need to get rid of? What did you like? What did you not like? Anything in that message, did I waste time on anything? Like, did I tell that story for two? Like, what do I need to change? What do we need to improve, right? Because what do we want? We don't want it to be awkward when you invite your friends, right? Like, I know it because my friends come all the time, and I'm like, okay, would this be awkward for them, right? I know there's Sundays you bring your friends, you're like, okay. People tell me, it's like, hey, I got some friends coming tomorrow. Like, please, like, don't be weird, right? Like, just don't say anything weird. Don't do anything weird. Just pastor, like, be normal, right? But it matters. Sundays, we're praying over all these seats. Not because we care about the chair, we care about the person in the chair, right? We care about the life that is here because you matter. You matter to us. I pray every Sunday, Lord, as people walk in carrying burdens, carrying things that they're wrestling with, would they walk out free from those things? Every Sunday, Lord, people that need to get healed, would they get healed? All week long, I'm praying. All week long, I'm praying for people to come to know Jesus, for people to have that encounter with God, to be transformed. It's a presentation. I was thinking about this the other day, and we were working on some schedules for vacation, and I really try to not miss church at all, right? I don't need to be preaching every week, but I try not to miss church. I thought, we only have 52 Sundays a year to reach people. And for some of you, like, wow, that's a lot. Like, that's a lot. Like, we never have the mindset of, oh, we'll just get it again next week, right? Like, it's important. It's important that we get these things right because you matter. Your family matters. The person sitting in this chair, they matter to us. So we want to do all that we can to have the best presentation. We want to make it as clear and succinct as possible. Last week, it was hot in here, and I told the guys, I said, listen, if it gets hot, like, crank that. I'll freeze me out, but I don't want people sitting uncomfortable, right? It's important. It's important. All those little things, they matter. They matter to us. They matter to you. They matter to your friends, right? And then here's the third part. It's about our participation. We all play this part in the church, and that's what I love about the church. It's not just one or two people. It's not just a few people. It's everyone. It's everyone. I was watching the team this morning when they were praying, and we were working on a couple things. I'm looking around the room, and I'm thinking, man, all those people are making a huge impact today in the lives of people. The way that they greet, the way they stand out front, the way they check kids in, the way they serve with mission kids. I had to run back and grab something during worship, and I just heard these kids like singing at the top of their lungs. They're having a blast back there. All those things matter. All those things matter, and it takes all of us, right? It takes all of us to participate. That grad party we were at last night, and at one moment before they prayed over the meal, the mom and the dad said, listen, I look around this room, and all of you have had an impact on our daughter. She's the reason she's at the place that she is because of those of you in the room. You've made a difference in her life. And that's true for every single one of us when it comes to serving Jesus and participating. We get to play a part, and that participation is huge. And then the final part, the final piece is this. Jesus said again, peace be with you, John 20:21. As the Father has sent me, so I'm sending you. A moment ago, Paige was leading us in worship, and I was just like, Lord, thank you for just the people that you bring that don't just have talent, but they have passion. They have a love for you. They want to lead us into the presence of God. And then I just kind of thought, like, how did Paige come to church? And then I realized, oh, Paige came to church because Matt and Andrea invited her. And I looked out, and I saw Amy, and Amy's had been having to work on Sundays, but I thought, man, Amy's here because Matt and Andrea invited her. And then I saw Andrew. I thought Andrew's here because Amy invited him. I don't know who Andrew's going to bring, but like, I just get excited by those kinds of things, right? All of us get to play a part in this invitation. All of us get to play a part in this. I want to conclude with the next chapter from Luke because it's something that was so important to Jesus. Luke 15, if you could just turn over one more page. Luke 15, it says this. Verse 1, tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. If you're struggling with anything in your life, you're like, man, I'm not worthy to come listen to the word of Jesus. Man, Jesus himself was surrounded by people, not just sinners, notorious sinners. I don't know what qualifies as a notorious sinner, but man, they were there, right? None of us are disqualified from following Jesus. Just remember that. This made the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. So Jesus told them this story. He said, if a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go to search for the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. When he arrives, he will call together his friends and neighbors, saying, rejoice with me because I have found my lost sheep. In the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than over 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. That picture that Jesus would say, rejoice with me, celebrate with me, because when someone was lost and they're found, it's the reason for celebration. It's the reason for rejoicing. Jesus says that's what gets heaven excited. That's what gets heaven fired up. That's what gets heaven to applaud and just say, God, this is amazing. Like, that's what causes heaven to celebrate. Last night, I was looking over some notes, and I thought, I wonder how many people have given their life to Jesus this year at Mission Church. And so I started going back through, and I looked it up. 77 people have given their life to Christ this year at our church. 77 people. I mean, you look around the room, and odds are there's a few of us here right now. I know people are gone for summer vacations, people are traveling, all those kinds of things, but 70, that's more people that gave their life to Christ in all of 2022. In just 5 months, more people have given their life to Jesus, and that's a cause for us to celebrate. Can we applaud the Lord for that this morning, for him just doing that? I mean, that's what God is doing, right? And I don't know about you, that just gets me fired up. That gets me fired up to know that lives are being changed. Last week, there was a gentleman sitting right here, and his daughter was on his lap, and we gave the invitation for people to give their life to Jesus. And his daughter looks up, and I look at her, and then I look at him, and tears are just coming down his face. The week before, there's another lady just sitting right there, right where you're sitting, Dad. During the invitation, she looks up, and it was just tears just streaming down her face, giving her life to Jesus. I thought, Lord, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, seeing what God is doing. And there's such a need, but there's a need for even more. There's a need for even more, and I get excited about it, but I'm like, Lord, I know you want to do even more. I know you want to bring even more people. I know you have something so great that you want to do. But we need more space. How many of you know we need more space? I mean, you're like, man, what my buddy said, it's kind of just like a big shipping container in here, right? And as you know, if you've been part of our church for any season of time, we've been looking and praying and searching. Every week, we're talking to realtors. Every week, we are doing all that we can to say, God, would you open up a home for us? A month ago, we got to take a tour of a church. It's a church that another church is selling because they're trying to buy a piece of property. In fact, we can pull up the video of this church. It's a church in Georgetown. It's called The Worship Place. And I'm just going to talk as you watch this video. But here's what I love. I love the fact that there's space. But there's not just space for us. There is significant space for our kids and for our youth. Right now, our youth meets on Wednesdays and on Sundays. And on Sundays, they're packed into this little room in the back. And I hate that. I want them to have a space and a place of their own. And you can see there's classrooms. You can see there's all kinds of space. There's a full commercial kitchen. There's a great area for a coffee bar. I was telling one of our members of our coffee team about this, and like, man, that would be awesome. They're like, we can't even like move behind the counter right there. It's just so packed in. And so there's room. The other thing that's really cool, it sits on just under 20 acres, which gives us a place not only for us, but for our children and our grandchildren. It gives us a place to expand. So we're praying, and we're asking God, would you help us to get this piece of property? Now, I want to be really honest with you. We don't know if this is our next home. We don't know. And there's a number of factors in play. The first factor is they don't know if they're going to be able to get the other piece of property in order to sell this. The second factor is there's another church that's trying to buy this piece of property. The third factor is it's a lot more money than we can afford. Us going after this is like a freshman going after the prom queen. Like, we just don't know, right? But you know what we do know? We know that God's called us to live with great faith. We know that God has called us to live with boldness. And we know that we don't want to live with regret. So we might not get this property, but we want to get a property. So we're going for this one. We're going for this one because we're saying, God, we believe that you're not only just going to give us a property, we believe you're going to give us a property that we can expand, that we can do so much more. We have a heart and a vision to have a drive-through food pantry for people in need. Guess what? That space has 351 parking spaces. It would give us a lot of room for those kinds of things. We have a desire to eventually maybe do a preschool that has the ability and the space to do that. We have a desire eventually to do a Bible college for Christian college students. And guess what? That has the space and the land eventually to build on that as well. We have a vision and a desire to create a co-working space for all of you that are saying, hey, I work from home, but I really don't want to be alone. We want to put a co-working space next to that coffee shop in that building. This space has not allowed us to do any of that. Not allowed us to do any of that. In fact, this morning a food truck rolled up and they were going to the church down the parking lot. And I thought, we asked if we could even just do that once. And they said, no food trucks at all. It's a conflict with the restaurants. We've been so limited by this. And yet God is still moving. We're seeing people get saved. We're seeing our church grow. But we now need to prepare for either this or for the home that God has for us. God put it upon our heart that in order to do this, we need to take a step of faith. We've been praying, but now it's time to plan, and it's time for us to all join in this together. It's time for us to say, okay, we're going to all participate in this. So this morning, we're going to kick off something called the Heart for the House. The Heart for the House is this, is we believe that God has a home, our first permanent church home. And we created these because we believe that it's something that we all get to participate in together. Don't you want to have more space to reach more people? Don't you want to see a place where your neighbors can come and not pull up and say, there's no parking, I'm sorry, I have to leave. Once a month, I get an email from someone saying, I tried to find a parking spot and I couldn't find one. And so that's why Pastor Johnny and his team said, hey, we're creating parking just for first-time guests. But that's not enough. We need more parking. We need more space. We need more places. And so we're taking this step of faith together. In just a moment, our ushers are going to pass these out. And what we want to ask is that you would take one of these, and over the next few weeks that you would you would pray to say, God, how am I supposed to give to this? How am I to give to this? And this is above and beyond our tithes and offerings. This is saying, God, we now need to set aside something. So when the right property, if it's this property or if it's another property happens, that we're able to get it, we're able to move, we're able to take that step. Many of you have been trying to buy homes in this season. You're saying, man, people come in and they offer a little bit more and I'm not able to get it. We don't want that to happen to us with the church property. We've seen that in a couple things. A couple things we've been pursuing, we didn't have the finances to be able to make the down payments to be able to get the property. So we're taking this step of faith together to say, God, we're going to pray over this. And so again, this is prayerful. I'm not asking you to fill this out today unless the Lord says, hey, I'm giving you this number, but it's sacrificial. We were talking about this and saying, for us, this means we're going to have to not do some things. We're going to have to say no to some things. We're going to sacrificially give above and beyond our tithes so that God can open up a home for us, that God can build our future, that God can grow this church like never before. And again, it's all of us participating in this. It's all of us saying, God, I'm going to take that step for you. So if you guys would come and if we could pass those out. And there's different ways that you can do this. You can fill it up online. You can fill it out here. There's a website we created for this called missionchurch.online/future, talking about more about this property, a little bit more of what we sense God is doing in this season, some of the things he's done already in this year. But I would ask that you would take this, and would you put this in a place that you see it? Would you say, God, I'm going to put this somewhere, and I'm going to pray over this every day. Here's a photo of my office. This is where mine is, right? I got my Texas banner in the background, but right there, that sits on my desk. And every day since I got this last week, I've just been praying, God, would you put that number, would you put that amount, would you put that place that you want us to give? Would that become clear to Kendra and I? And if you are married, man, you got to be praying for that with your spouse together. But praying for that. Church, how many of you know that God wants to do something amazing this next season? We've already seen it, right? How many of you know that as we move into this place, we don't have, any day, our property management company could come to us and say, hey, your lease is done. It expired about 2 months ago. We just keep sending in our checks. We know that God has a place for us. How many of you know that God wants to do something amazing in our city, in our county? We met with some county officials. They told us in the next 15 years, Williamson County is going to grow 1.5 million people. We got to make space for that. We got to make room for that. The city's making room. We as a church need to make room. How many of you know that God has so many people that he wants to see be part of our church, be part of our community, be part of our family, experiencing the love and the grace and the peace of God? Let's move in this together. Would you bow your heads with me? God, today, we thank you